A pleasure to me all at last. And because we're on our final stretch of films I should have talked about years ago, I mentioned before I was going to be doing a few more of these episodes, and I felt like Sonic the Hedgehog would have been a good way to go out with this season of films I should have talked about years ago. So, because I've already covered the first film yesterday, I figured, why not go ahead and have at it with the sequels? So in this instance, I would like to get things put together with the sequel, Sonic the Hedgehog 2. This, of course, came out just over 2 years later in April 2022, and it was around the same time that there were a few other notable pieces. I do remember I spent a whole weekend watching movies at the theater, and this, of course, was one of them, with the other two being The Bad Guys, and there was also a Nick Cage film, Unstoppable Talent. Yeah, I forget the title of that one, but 3 films I watched over the course of that weekend, and I'd say it was a pretty damn good weekend. Probably one of the best I had. No joke. Anyways though, Sonic the Hedgehog 2 really blew me away, and by critical and financial standards, it did not disappoint. It was just another one of those cases in which that a sequel can very much overtake the original. And in this case, what it does is a combination of world building, the introduction of new elements including characters, and recognizable icons from the games, as well as having some newer affiliations, mainly with all the live action pieces and the sets that they were able to film at, including up in Russia. Let me explain. The plot, first of all, if you might remember what happened in the ending of the last film, Dr. Robotnik, played by Jim Carrey once again in this film, was sent to a mushroom planet as the supposed climax, which, while it wouldn't be great for what it is, all it does is just send the enemy to another place in the multiverse. But the point is, he got sent to a location which is essentially like his prison, and he makes do with it for some time. It's not exactly unclear how much time has been spent out there on that mushroom planet, but one thing's for certain. He had shaved his head, gotten his mustache to grow out pretty well, and he's also developed that kind of crazed mindset that Robotnik himself has. He essentially becomes what has been seen as the Eggman, and I could probably understand what they were going with. In this direction, you have Robotnik seen as a professional, keen, yet humorous scientist. But in this instance, a man who has now been living on a mushroom planet for some time, possibly even years had passed since he was sent there in the first place, he also hasn't really gotten used to the taste of mushroom coffee, so he honestly should try Everyday Dose, like I've been doing for years. In any case though, he's been there for a long time, and the overall aura of him not simply being able to come back, but on the other hand, he has crafted a device that would supposedly emit massive waves in which that would supposedly allow for him to find a way out. And how exactly does he power it? Well, as we saw in one of the end credits scenes in the last film, he was able to steal one of Sonic's quills. And let me remind you guys, the quill happens to play a pretty big clue in the Robotniks in these films. And it's kind of a recurring gag, if you will. But in this instance, it actually does play a part in finding a way out for Robotnik. Although in reality, a ring portal opens up in front of him, and out comes some tribal personnel. While they aren't exactly very friendly with him, Robotnik apparently was prepared for whatever threats came his way, because he rigged up some booby traps, and he manages to set them off, and they all got taken down pretty easily. Quite crafty for an evil being like him, won't you think? But he successfully manages to find his way back, and of course, as we pan back to our main cast, which of course now includes Tails the Fox, as we once again saw in the last film, he was shown to have arrived on Earth in Green Hills, which of course is the same US township that, of course, Sonic himself lives in. We also do have Ben Schwartz returning as the same voice for Sonic like in the last film, and we definitely can't forget James Marsden playing Tom Wachowski. And there of course are various other characters that we have had from the last film that also come back in here for some time, but the point is that our cast is pretty much back where we left off with. Though, it seems, like I said, a lot of time might have passed since all that stuff from the last film transpired. And more importantly, there's more things to come here. Because you might remember that little trinket that Sonic was given to as a young kid before he got down to the Green Hills? Well, his mother, so to speak, manages to come up in the form of some sort of encrypted message. A message that displays a hologram of her, letting Sonic know about a few clues. Clues that, of course, are found deep in the heart of the cold, snowy, mountainous regions of Siberia, Russia. And as it turns out, these clues happen to lead up to some sort of tavern. As with Sonic and Tails, they do actually manage to find their way up there via a ring. And when they do, they have to bundle up and stuff because man is it cold and treacherous. Even when they make their way over to the tavern, it gets a little difficult at first, but hey, some time does pass, and they successfully manage to get everybody equal thanks to a little dance-off set to some Mark Ronson's Uptown Funk. And no, it's not Bruno Mars, he is just the starring role here, like a special guest. It's kind of like when those people thought that Allo Block had made the song Wake Me Up, when really it was Swedish DJ and record producer Avicii. Yeah. So, enough with that argument, guys. It's getting old, kind of. Anyways, though, we are basically cutting back between our villainous cast and our good cast like we have done in the last film. But in this instance, there comes along another character, Knuckles the Echidna. Yeah. It was practically known that he would not only star making an appearance in Sonic the Hedgehog 2, but he would make one hell of a showcase here. I mean, this is a character who's well known for his brute strength and his not so smart behavior. I mean, he essentially is quite gullible and is often tricked and even pulled into a lot of schemes that Eggman himself has done. I mean, you remember Sonic X or Sonic Boom? Any of those continuities that showed how stupid Knuckles himself really is? I mean, it is true, his big obstacle is his own brain, and here, it's not much different. But I guess the one big redeeming factor that really levels it out for us is the fact that he's voiced by Idris Elba. Probably the best English black man in the world. And I'm not even kidding. Well, anyways, though, it's a good fitting voice for him, but I can't entirely say that it essentially is just as what was convincing in the earlier segments of Knuckles the Echidna, where he had other voice actors. Some might even believe that in the Adventure era, it really showed that Knuckles supposedly wasn't nearly as dumb as they made him out to be since then. Since Sonic X, it seems that the character has had a lot more showcases in stupidity, as well as pure naivety. The not so good understanding of how good differentiates from evil. Like, he basically doesn't want to choose sides here. But it overall does come out in a pretty big way. Because the main thing about Knuckles the Echidna is the fact that he is, of course, the final descendant of the group of echidnas that have been around for thousands of years. He's the last one of his kind, and there's a certain precious object of his from his home that he swore to protect with all his might. The Master Emerald. This, of course, is a conduit for the power of 7 unique gemstones dubbed the Chaos Emeralds. And yes, having Knuckles the Echidna is one thing, but the introduction of the Master Emerald and all the Chaos Emeralds is just as impressive. I mean, they really throw a lot of hats in the ring here. Because unlike with the first film, in which that it was a bit slow to incorporate a lot of familiar Sonic-related stuff, a lot of lore, if you will, we mostly just had Sonic and Robotnik, who didn't even look anywhere close to his more realistic appearance here. But in this film, we get a lot more of that. And the fact that we have Tails and Knuckles and the Emeralds means we're truly in for the ride of a Sonic film here. While the first one was a bit slow to start, the second one really picks it up. Like, it climbs up a much steeper gradient than we'd ever thought was possible. Well, in any case, though, it was only a matter of time before a number of things would ensue. A freak encounter with Eggman eventually led to Tom, Sonic, Tails, and the others making a retreat, while Knuckles, the Echidna, is called up for a meeting with Eggman, especially when Knuckles unfortunately would lose the fight to Sonic. Yeah. When the likes of Eggman and Knuckles first came together, they basically formulated a plan to take down Sonic and Tails. Knuckles practically believed that they were responsible for stealing the Master Emerald, and Eggman himself just somehow figured out, in seconds at this point, that Knuckles is gullible enough to start following in his evil plans. It's just like what we saw before. Eggman steals the Master Emerald, while Knuckles is just left to deal with Sonic and Tails, and as brazen as he is, he eventually comes to light on the fact that, unfortunately, reality is a lot different than what he perceived it. And in this case, though, what we have is one hell of a journey here. A journey that eventually leads to a labyrinth that Knuckles and Eggman have to navigate, and with Sonic and Tails trying to find their way through into this labyrinth that is apparently situated just off of an island. An island that apparently was invaded by Sonic and Tails after a freak avalanche occurred. But maybe more importantly, all of that stuff that has come around all boils up to an insane final battle. Eggman apparently grabs hold of the Master Emerald and absorbs the power into his body, and holy crap. The fact is that he goes back to his old minion, Agent Stone, whom in the first film seemed like a reliable guy, but now is being treated more of an expendability. And you know what's really cool though is that Stone himself actually got a pretty big life. He's running his own coffee shop. But of course, he sets up with sanitary grade F and all the usual practices to prepare for Eggman's re-arrival. After what seems like months or even years without him by his side, I guess Stone had to think of something since he was no longer going to get paid by Eggman. Well, anyways though, even when he does come back, Eggman still does not really give much of a crap about Stone whatsoever. Because, what do you know? Eggman's a little too powerful for his own good, and even worse, there comes a big massive machine, the Death Egg robot. It's just like what the Sonic the Hedgehog 2 video game from 1992 had given us. Just the fact that these things are 30 years apart, and the fact that they have the Chaos Emerald and the Death Egg robot all put into play here. That is pretty impressive. It's like the planets are aligned on Friday the 13th with a blue moon and a solar eclipse occurring at the same time. Either way you look at it though, while the fight against the Death Egg robot does come around, even with the famous biplane called the Tornado, a unique little thing that Sonic and Tails put together. Pretty much like when Tails and Sonic first met in canon, according to most storylines. The biplane was basically sitting out in the middle of nowhere, and apparently this was something that Sonic had, but Tails fixed it all by himself. Even at the age of 9 years old. That's still quite impressive. In any case though, like I've said, it's pretty fruitless. But the real big moment starts to come around when the power of the Chaos Emerald shows up, and then, boom. Super Sonic is born, y'all. And it's insane. Oh my gosh. The whole thing with Eggman is just royally screwed, because when you have a supersonic hedgehog, you know you're going to lose the fight pretty easily. And in this instance, it just does not disappoint. Eggman is knocked over, and we don't see what happened to him, although some people had made their predictions on what happened supposedly at the end of the battle in this film. But either way you look at it, it'd be a while before we eventually got a part 3. And on top of that, because of the success that the second film made, there eventually came along other pieces, including a Knuckles the Echidna spin-off, which itself is something I'm going to have to look into in the future. In any case though, this is an amazing movie. Certainly much better than the first one. Like I said, the first one was a bit slow to incorporate a lot of the Sonic related stuff, and it just focused a lot more on what the realistic aspects were. There were a lot of robots for Sonic to fight, and there was a lot of moments with him and Tom. There was a lot of stuff going on with Eggman and his own private affairs, especially in his own unique freightliner. But the second film did so much more that most Sonic fans would have wanted to see. And I was especially happy at what they managed to do here. So, I'm going to give this film an 8.9 out of 10.1. Enough said. But that still won't be enough. I'm going to be coming back tomorrow to talk a bit about the third film. And then and only then, we'll pretty much call it quits. For this season at least. I know I'll be coming back with more of this stuff in the future, but if you want to see more go down on my channel, make sure to like, subscribe, comment, follow me wherever you can find me, and stay on the Hollywood side.